It was a rainy evening in Istanbul, and the city seemed quieter than usual. In the middle of that silence, Demet walked into a small cafe she knew very well. She had been there many times before, but tonight was different. Tonight, every detail mattered: the dim lights, the smell of coffee in the air, the empty chair across her table. Because tonight, she wasn't simply there to drink coffee. She was there to wait. Demet chose her usual spot by the window, where she could watch the people outside rushing with their umbrellas. She ordered her drink, sat down, and placed her phone on the table. Her eyes kept going back to the screen, waiting for it to light up with a name, his name. Can. They had spoken earlier that day. He had promised to come. He had promised to meet her here. And for Demet, that promise meant more than he could ever imagine. It wasn't just about seeing him. It was about finding out whether the bond they once had still lived in both of them. As she sat there, memories began to flood her mind. The first time she and Can had shared laughter during filming, the long conversations after the cameras stopped, the spark that had once been so obvious to everyone around them. Those memories weren't just from a television set. They were real. And now, she was waiting to see if any of it still remained. The clock on the wall showed 7 in the evening. It was still early, she told herself. He would come. He had to. But with each passing minute, her chest felt heavier. The chair across from her remained empty, and her thoughts became louder than the cafe itself. What if he didn't come? What if this night ended in silence, instead of answers? For Demet, waiting wasn't new. She had waited before, for phone calls, for messages, for moments that never came. But this time was different. This was the night that could either heal something broken, or break it forever. The minutes began to move slower, as if time itself was mocking her. Demet leaned back in her chair, staring at the steam rising from her untouched coffee. It had been 20 minutes since she sat down, and every single second carried the weight of expectation. Her heart still believed he would come. But her mind had already started whispering doubts she didn't want to hear. She picked up her phone again. No messages. No calls. Just the same empty screen reflecting her anxious face. She unlocked it, scrolled through old conversations with him, and stopped at the last words he had sent: "Don't worry. I'll be there." A promise written in black and white, now beginning to feel like an illusion. Her mind wandered back to the past, their long nights of laughter on set, the way he would look at her when the cameras weren't rolling. To the outside world, they were co-stars. To their fans, they were the perfect couple everyone dreamed about. But only Demet knew how real it felt when no one else was watching. That was the reason she was here tonight. Not for closure, not for answers, but for confirmation that she hadn't imagined everything they once shared. The cafe grew louder around her. Groups of friends laughed, couples whispered to each other, strangers came and went. Yet she sat in the middle of it all, feeling isolated, as if a glass wall had been built between her and the rest of the world. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, even though it had already gone cold. Every little sound, every time the door opened, her heart jumped. But every time, it wasn't him. The clock on the wall now showed 8 o'clock. An entire hour had passed. She told herself there must be a reason. Maybe he was stuck in traffic. Maybe a last-minute meeting kept him. Maybe he was on his way right now, rushing through the streets of Istanbul to see her. She clung to those excuses because the alternative was too painful to accept, that he simply wasn't coming. She thought of calling him. Her fingers hovered over his number. But fear stopped her. What if he didn't answer? What if he rejected her call? Sometimes silence is easier than the sound of rejection. She locked her phone and placed it back on the table, her hands trembling slightly. Demet looked out the window. The rain had slowed, and the streets outside glistened under the dim street lights. She imagined him walking through the door at that very moment, smiling the way he always did, making her believe that waiting had been worth it. But the door stayed closed, and the empty chair in front of her remained a cruel reminder of his absence. For the first time that evening, her hope began to weaken. She felt a lump in her throat, the kind that comes before tears. But she refused to cry, not here, not in public, not over him. She straightened her back, pressed her lips together, and told herself to wait just a little longer. Because if she left now, it would mean giving up on him forever. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The clock struck 9. 2 hours had passed since Demet walked into the cafe, and the empty chair across from her had become unbearable to look at. Every time she glanced at it, she felt like the world was reminding her of something she didn't want to admit: he wasn't there. He wasn't coming. Her mind fought with her heart. He'll walk in any second. He wouldn't leave me waiting like this. But then another voice answered: if he cared, he would already be here. If he wanted to see you, nothing would have stopped him. She pressed her palm against her chest, trying to calm the storm inside her. Waiting had turned into a battle, between hope and reality, between memory and truth. She remembered the first time she and Can had sat together in a cafe, years ago. Back then, their smiles came easily, their words flowed without effort. He had leaned across the table, teasing her about how she always ordered the same drink. She had laughed, knowing he was paying more attention to her than anyone else in the room. That memory hurt now, because tonight she was sitting in the same position, but he wasn't there to finish the story. The cafe had started to empty. People paid their bills, couples left hand in hand, and the staff began to clean the counters. The life around her was moving forward, but she was stuck in place, frozen in the moment. She picked up her phone again, scrolling through photos of the two of them. Smiles captured forever, moments that had once felt unshakable. She whispered to herself, was it ever real? Or was I the only one who believed? A sudden wave of anger cut through her sadness. Why hadn't he answered her message? Why hadn't he called? Why make a promise if you had no intention of keeping it? Her hands clenched into fists, not out of hatred, but out of desperation. Because anger was easier than heartbreak. Then came the breaking point. The barista approached her gently, almost apologetically, and said, "Miss, we'll be closing soon." Those words pierced through her. Closing soon. The night was ending. The cafe that had been her sanctuary of hope was about to shut its doors. And Can still hadn't come. She stared at the chair one last time, as if by some miracle he would appear in that exact moment. But the seat stayed empty, just as it had been all night. Her chest tightened, and for the first time, her eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked them away, refusing to let them fall in front of strangers. Demet stood up slowly, her legs weak from sitting too long. She picked up her bag, her phone, and her unfinished coffee. Every movement felt heavy, final. She walked to the door, and as she stepped outside into the cold night air, a thought echoed in her mind: I waited until the cafe closed, but he never came. That night, something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but silently, like glass shattering in the dark. Demet walked out of the cafe and into the damp Istanbul night. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the city felt heavier than ever. The streets were quieter now, the rush of earlier hours replaced by the emptiness of a late evening. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, yet nothing could shield her from the cold she felt inside. She began to walk, her steps slow, her mind racing. Every streetlight she passed seemed to highlight her loneliness. She replayed the night in her head over and over again, how she had waited, how she had hoped, how she had convinced herself that at any moment the door would open and Can would walk in with that smile that always disarmed her. But he never did. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and her heart leapt. She stopped under a street lamp, her breath catching as she unlocked the screen. But it wasn't him. Just another meaningless notification, another reminder that the silence between them was louder than any words. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to scream at him for breaking his promise, for letting her sit alone until the cafe closed. But beneath the anger, there was something far more painful, an ache, a longing that refused to let go. Because deep down, no matter what he did, she still loved him. And that was the cruelest truth of all. Later, in a quiet interview months after that night, when asked about her most emotional moment, Demet finally let the memory slip out. She didn't speak with bitterness, nor with accusation. She spoke with a softness that revealed the weight of her heartbreak. "I waited," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I waited until the cafe closed. I waited until there was no one left but me. And he never came." Those words weren't rehearsed, and they weren't meant to hurt anyone. They were simply the truth. A truth she had carried silently, until she could no longer keep it hidden. For those who heard her say it, the pain in her voice was undeniable. Fans who adored her and Can together felt their hearts break along with hers. Because it wasn't just a confession of waiting, it was a confession of love, of disappointment, of wounds that had never fully healed. And somewhere, far from the cameras, Can heard those words too. What he felt in that moment, no one truly knew. Did he regret it? Did he wish he had walked through that cafe door that night? Or did he believe silence had been easier than facing her eyes? Whatever the answer, the truth was out now, and it would follow them both forever. Time passed, but that night never left Demet's heart. No matter how many roles she played, how many new projects came her way, or how many smiles she gave to the cameras, the memory of sitting in that cafe stayed with her like a shadow. Some wounds don't bleed on the surface, they live quietly inside, reminding you of what was lost. Every time she walked past a cafe, she felt that invisible pull back to that empty chair. She could almost see herself again, waiting with her coffee growing cold, staring at the door that never opened. For everyone else, it was just another ordinary night. But for her, it was the night her faith in him cracked. Her friends told her to forget, to move on, to let time heal. But how do you forget the person who once made the world feel brighter just by being in the same room? How do you erase the feeling of waiting for someone you believed would never let you down? The truth is, you don't. You carry it with you. It becomes part of your story. And for Demet, that story was tied to Can. Their names had always been connected, not just on screen but in the hearts of millions who believed in their love. Fans wanted a fairy tale, but life had written something far more complicated. That night in the cafe was proof of it. Love can lift you higher than you ever dreamed, but it can also leave you waiting in the dark, wondering if the person you trusted will ever show up. In a later interview, Demet summed it up in one sentence. Her eyes glistened as she whispered the truth she had kept inside for so long. "I waited until the cafe closed, but he never came." Those words echoed far beyond that studio, reaching everyone who had followed their story. Some felt anger toward Can, others felt sympathy for Demet, but all of them felt the weight of her pain. Because waiting for someone you love, and realizing they will not come, is one of the deepest heartbreaks anyone can endure. And somewhere, in his own silence, Can carried that night too. Perhaps with regret, perhaps with longing. Perhaps he wished he had walked through the door, sat in that chair, and given her the closure she deserved. Or maybe he knew that showing up would have made everything even harder. The truth is, no one knows what held him back. But what everyone knows is that Demet's confession was real, raw, and unforgettable. That night became a symbol. Not just of their relationship, but of how fragile love can be. How it can make you wait with all your heart, only to leave you alone when you need it most. And so, the story of Demet and Can continues to haunt those who believe in love. A silent goodbye that was never spoken, a meeting that never happened, and a memory that will never fade. Because sometimes, the most painful moments are not the ones filled with words or fights, but the ones filled with silence.